All right, good afternoon, everyone. It is now 2 o'clock exactly, and I want to get us started early because we have a lot to cover. But again, thank you all for joining us early. My name is William Moore, and we will go ahead and begin today's webinar. So again, good afternoon. Thank you all again for joining us for today's webinar, Key Planning Decisions to Successfully Launch Family Drug Courts. My name is William Moore, and I am with OJJDP's National Training and Technical Assistance Center. As your technical host, I would like to take a couple of minutes to discuss a few features of Adobe Connect webinar platform and provide a few announcements to keep in mind. For those wishing to download a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and other important documents, you may do so by locating the Handouts pod. Please note that here you will find an FAQ for webinar participants that will likely address any technical related questions that you have. Simply click on the name of the file, and then click the download button. Please note that the Handouts pod is located right below the closed captioning pod. At the end of today's webinar, there will be a Q&A where the presenters will address some of the questions posed during the presentation. Please type your questions into the chat box as they arise. For those of you participating in today's webinar as a group, please take a minute to help us count. Go to the chat window and type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. If you are viewing it alone, there is no need to do anything at this time. So please take a few minutes to go ahead and type in additional people that are in the room with you today. At the conclusion of today's webinar, you will be provided with a link to a brief survey about today's presentation. The feedback you provide is used to assist in future planning and training. And following today's webinar, attendees will be sent a certificate of attendance. This certificate is sent approximately 1 hour following the conclusion of the event and is sent via Adobe Connect thank you email. Please keep an eye on your email for your certificate. And finally, the webinar today will be recorded and will be archived in approximately 3 weeks on OJJDP's NTTAC YouTube channel, where you can also view past webinars. If you would like to receive supporting documents like PowerPoint presentation, presenter bios, transcripts, etc., please contact OJJDP TTA Help Desk at OJJDP-TTA@usdoj.gov. Again, thank you all for joining us today. And now I would like to turn it over to our moderator, Jane Pfeiffer, for today's webinar. Jane?
Thank you. Thanks so much, William. I'd like to specifically thank NTTAC for hosting this webinar. We're very excited about today's webinar. My name is Jane Pfeiffer, and I also want to welcome everyone to our live presentation. This webinar is pardon me, a little difficulty here. Yes, so this webinar, Ready, Set, Go, Key Planning Decisions to help you successfully launch your family drug court. We guess that many of you who are joining today already have launched your family drug court, and this is really an opportunity for those of you who are planning, those of you who are in early implementation, and those who already have an operational program to learn some of the innovative and strategies for all of you to improve your practice across the country. So today's presentation is going to be a webinar by way of Café Conversation. And what that means is that we really, really want this to be interactive. To that end, we want to start by acknowledging and thanking the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, or OJJDP. They support the work that we do. However, we also want to note that the opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this webinar are those of the authors and the presenters and not necessarily those of the Department of Justice. So this particular Café Conversation webinar is the first of our 2018 Café Conversation webinar series. In May, we'll be exploring what family drug courts need to know about serving mothers affected by opioid use disorders and their infants. And in August, we want to discuss how your family drug court can further examine and address racial disproportionality and disparities. And in September, we'll explore how family drug courts can rethink their phasing system, progress in recovery, and readiness for reunification. We want you to please visit our website, www.cffutures.org, or our Learning Academy flyer for further information about this year's webinar series. If you haven't already, we would encourage you to view our 30-minute pre-recorded video in which we explore 5 key planning decisions that your team will encounter as you plan to launch a family drug court in your community. You're going to hear me and also our presenters probably use the term family drug court, or FDC, as well as family treatment court, or FTC. The field is really moving toward family treatment court, but we know that many of you across the country use these terms interchangeably as well as others to describe your program. So please know that we mean the same thing as we're talking about FDCs or FTCs. We also created a team discussion guide for the 30-minute pre-recorded video, and your team can use this to further explore the content presented in that webinar. We also want to make sure that you check out the recently released Family Treatment Court Planning Guide. This planning guide was published by the National Drug Court Institute and Children and Family Futures. The planning guide provides step-by-step instructions to start and implement an FTC in a community. This guide is truly a collaborative effort designed to achieve improved outcomes for children and families. We encourage you to take a look. It was recently released. So let's start with a poll question. We want to know what your current level of interest is in the topic that we're covering today in our webinar. So this will be one of just a couple of poll questions, but you should see on your screen right now a set of questions and then some options. So what we'd like to do now, if you could just take a moment, we're just going to give you a few seconds here to answer this particular question. We want to know if you already have a family treatment court, if you definitely need and want to start a family treatment court, whether you're still exploring whether or not your community needs a family treatment court, or whether maybe you're still learning about the family treatment court model and are attending to learn more. If there's another option that we haven't offered for you, we definitely want to know that as well. And so please type if you could click other as an option and then tell us what you mean in the chat box. We'll give you just a couple of more seconds. Lots of great responses. Okay, 2 more seconds, and then we will close this out. Looks like folks are still voting, but go ahead and close. We're going to close this poll just to get a sense of. So now we want, you should be able to see the results here. It looks like almost half, almost 44% of you already have a family treatment court. We're glad you're here. Even though we're talking about launching a family treatment court, we can all learn how to improve our programs. And then we see about almost 25% of you are still learning about the family treatment court and want to learn more. You're in the right place. Really, all of these responses we're going to be discussing and really want to talk more about. And so you're going to hear from our panelists in just a moment, and you'll have an opportunity really to ask questions as well. All right, let's go. We're going to use this information as we go through, but it's good to have a sense of who's in the room. So thank you all for taking time to participate in this poll. So today we want to hear from panelists, and we have 3 communities that are participating today and that we're excited to hear from. These are communities across the country that have successfully launched a family drug court. They've had to make key decisions along the way, and we want to hear what challenges they face, what factors contributed to their success, and how they have overcome or are overcoming those challenges. They offer a wealth of experience and wisdom, some of which we will try to capture and hear from today. They offer a lot of information, and these are programs, and we want to start by thanking our panelists and having them introduce themselves. So let's start by hearing from Grant County, Indiana.
Good afternoon. My name is Ariel Andrews, and I am the court coordinator for our Family Recovery Court. So that's another acronym to add in there for the FDC or FTC. Hi, my name is Leslie Hendricks. I'm the executive director of our local CASA program, Court Appointed Special Advocates for Children.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So as you see, Grant County, Indiana is one of our panelists, and the slide you're seeing now just gives you a sense of where they are located within the state of Indiana. And now we'd like to hear from our Montgomery County, Ohio panelists.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tricia Lucido. I am from Montgomery, Ohio, which is our largest city is Dayton, Ohio. We have been in operation with our family treatment court for about 18 months. And I'm the manager also of all of our specialized dockets, which would include our mental health docket and our juvenile treatment court docket.
And my name is Kyla Woods. I am the coordinator for the Family Treatment Court.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. And before we move on, can I have Grant County tell us when you launched your program?
Yes, sorry, we skipped that. So we started our planning in 2013, and then we launched in 2015, so we've been in 3 years of operations.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Okay, and then last but not least, we want to hear from our presenters from Pinellas County, Florida.
Hello, my name is Gina Jeffrey. I am the supervisor of our Dependency Drug Court program, another 3 letters as well. We originally launched in 2006 and 2007, and then we stopped due to funding issues, circuit cutbacks, and we launched this time in 2017. So we've been active a little over a year again.
And my name is Doug Elliott, and I'm the coordinator of our Dependency Drug Court in Pinellas County.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Okay, so we're going to move into the first of our questions. Now, as I mentioned, this webinar series is a little bit different than some you've seen, participated in, that Children and Family Futures has delivered, and maybe others that you've participated in. We really want this to be interactive, and to do so, we want you to pose questions in the chat box, either to a specific panelist or community, or just a general question for all of them. So while we do have a couple of questions here we're going to lead with, we also know that there may be other questions or follow-up questions that you want to ask. Please put those in the chat box, and we'll make sure to have the panelists respond to them. Additionally, just want to let you know that we're going to have an open question and answer, so if you want to wait till that time, that's perfectly fine as well. So our first question to our panelists is, how did you use data to establish the need? So this first question, obviously, we know that lots of communities have a sense already that they need a family treatment court. It may be obvious to those who are in the planning phases. It may be widely accepted. However, it's important to take time to collect relevant data so that you can determine and demonstrate really to other stakeholders the necessity for a family treatment court in your community. So we want to ask our panelists, starting with Grant County, how did you use data to establish the need in your community?
Sure. So obviously everybody's experiencing the opiate epidemic, and we experienced a huge increase in our filing for CHINS cases, specifically substance-exposed infants. So when moms are using in utero and then the baby is born positive. So some statistics that we have encountered was the national average in 2013 was 4.3 per 1,000 births. Were considered NAS, so it's neonatal abstinence syndrome. In 2016, for Grant County, Marion General Hospital alone, we were at 25.7 That number in 2017 increased to 40.1. So we are significantly higher than the national average when it comes to substance-exposed infants. For Judge Kenworthy, she's our fearless leader, it was when the same mom rolled in with baby number 6 that was substance-exposed infant. That was the straw that broke the camel's back for her, that said we need to do something in our county to address this need. We had an adult drug court program where some CHIN's parents, if they had criminal charges, would get the benefit of that intense supervision. But if they didn't have criminal charges, then they didn't get that access to treatment that way. And Judge felt that was really unfair. And again, with the filing, just the number of CHIN's cases that we had in general, I think from 2015, we had a 34.7% increase over 2014, and our numbers just keep climbing year after year. So we haven't had an equal year or a lesser year since, I think, 2013. So the numbers just keep climbing, and that was where we established our need to establish a family recovery court.
And in addition, while we've been in operation with FRC, we have noticed a very large increase in the number of termination of parental rights cases that have been filed. We had an increase in 2017 of 173% of TPRs filed. And I believe, if my statistics are right, 80 to 90% of those involve substance abuse issues and addiction issues. So it's really just running rampant within our community.
So Grant County, let me ask a couple of follow-up questions. One is from that we're getting from the attendees, and the question is, does your program require a parent to have a criminal case? So Grant County, if you could answer that, and then I'll ask it again when we get to our other panelists. So let's start with that question. Do you require your parents, and if you don't require it, do you find that some of the parents do have a criminal case?
So we do not require that they have a criminal case to participate in our program. The two factors that we consider just to flag them to get screened for the program is if they have a substance use disorder and if they have a CHIN's case. So if they do not have a CHIN's case, they do not qualify for our program. We work very closely with our corrections within our county, and so if they do have a criminal case, sometimes they get the benefit of prosecution delaying while they're participating in our program, and if they successfully complete family recovery court, they may get their case dismissed or a lesser charge based on their participation. Other times we would just work really closely with the probation department if they're placed on probation, or they're already on probation and then have a CHIN's case filed after that. We work very well together to make that gap in service.
And just to be clear, CHIN's is Children in Need of Services?
Correct.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's different in every state, but right. Very good. Okay.
Yes.
Then one other quick follow-up question before we move on to our next panelist. So were there any interesting takeaways from using data, either the data that you just discussed or other data points, that when you shared it with your stakeholders or team members that there was kind of an aha moment or a surprise? Because I find that everyone has, even if they haven't thought about it, but they have a sense, or they think they know what what the prevalence is of certain issues, and yet when they hear the actual data, sometimes it can be surprising, either that it's higher or lower than what they were guessing. Did that happen at all in Grant County?
I would say that it didn't. We have a very cohesive group of people across the county working in this area. I believe we have a lot of data already from our local hospital. They were spearheading the opioid task force even at the time that we were developing this program. We have multiple problem-solving court models already, so our community was just really behind this and not surprised at all by the data, and really we didn't have any pushback at all for the need for an FRC program.
Great. Thanks so much. Now let's move to Montgomery County, Ohio. How is it that you use data to establish the need?
So we were very fortunate in that leadership from all of our stakeholders, Children's Services Agency, our local Adams Board, our court, were all behind the idea of starting a family treatment court. We knew the need of the community at the time, as Dayton at the time was ranked nationally #1 for the amount of deaths due to overdose at that time. However, with that being said, we also had the most difficult time substantiating the numbers due to it just hadn't been tracked, especially in our children's services system at the time. It was optional to click on a button that would say whether or not this case was substance abuse related in any way. So identifying those numbers was a little tough. Where we got lucky was the state had done a mining expedition to obtain some numbers that would prove to us and kind of give us the courage to move ahead. Was they had found, the state had done it initially, and they had found that heroin was cited as a reason for action in over 25,000 child protective cases in the state. And during that same time period, we had saw in our county 132% increase in child welfare cases where opiates were cited as a reason for action at that time. And so with that being said, we have changed some processes. We have been working with Children's Services to start tracking that differently so that at any given time we can substantiate our existence and why we're there. We do believe that we can show that in numerous ways, but it would be obviously very beneficial at any given time to be able to say, hey, we have this many in our community, just moving forward when we would like to expand, because we've already expanded once. And so as we're closing in on our capacity, we feel that we will need to expand once again, and we would like to be able to say that there's this many more cases still out there that have been related to substance abuse in children's services, protective services at that time. But as of right now, we don't have it, but it is a work in progress.
We're getting some questions, and we'll circle back and have Grant County answer this as well. But Montgomery County, can you tell us if a couple of questions. If your team, if your family treatment court team, is it the same or is it similar to your adult drug court team?
No, it's completely different. We traveled throughout the state actually looking at a couple different types of courts before we actually implemented our court. And in Montgomery County, we are very fortunate in that we do have an adult drug court, which is for males, and we also have a women's therapeutic court for females. And when we went into those kinds of settings, the thing that we heard the most, and we were very fortunate, the management of those, or the court administration of those programs gave us kind of brains to go in and ask a lot of questions, confidential, behind closed doors. And so the biggest response that we received was they never talked to us about how to keep our kids or how to get our kids back. And so we knew there was a definite need. I mean, that just really hit it home time after time. And I can say out of, the 6 or 7 ones that adult drug courts or even gender-related courts, that was still an issue in every single one of them.
Yeah, and so we're getting some questions from the attendees. You mentioned about expanding, and I'm guessing you're talking about expanding your capacity, so increasing the number of parents or families and children that you can serve. Can you say what your capacity is now, currently? How many you're serving and what your capacity is?
Well, we started out with 35, and we got some extra funding, and we were able to expand to 50.
Initially, though, we didn't have any funding, and our capacity, it was just Kyla and I. That was our entire team, from the grant writing to the community piece to whatever family treatment court was needed at the time. And so we were only going to be able to treat 10 families. And so we went from 10 to 50.
Great.
And that was through, we've received two federal grants, SAMHSA and OJJDP.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. All right, let's hear from Pinellas County, Florida. Talk to us about data and how you used it to establish need.
Well, we are definitely unique because, as we previously stated, we had a successful program back in 2006. We would have loved to continue at that point in time, but due to circuit cutbacks, we lost staff. Therefore, we could not continue. We knew there was a continual need. Our substance-exposed children coming into care did not decrease in any way, shape, or form. So continually, our staff wrote for more grants to try to get another drug court up and running. Each time we would have more meetings, we would bring our stakeholders together, we would ask if they would be interested in supporting this grant. Each time they were. We're very fortunate. Our stakeholders tend to stay the same over the years. So we're the same people. That they knew how well it was going last time. They wanted to do it again. And so this last time we were successful. We were able to get our grant. We learned quite a bit our first go-around. So what we did is just took off where we left off last time. So we just did exactly what we did before. We are lucky this time. In our grant, we actually wrote for a coordinator, which is Doug, and we had lots of great ideas. So we took what we learned from 2006, we put that into this program, and we went from there. So the actual numbers, we just obtained that from our child protective investigators and our case management agencies. They've always been very supportive of us and give us whatever data that we need.
And can you tell us what your capacity is currently?
Our grant is for 3 years, so we have a capacity of 35 per year. Our first year, our time goes from September to September. We didn't actually start until January of 2017, so we were a few months behind to begin with. And then we had a few months that we didn't have a coordinator, and we finally were able to get Doug on board, and he fit the bill perfectly. So we were a little bit behind. We did not reach our mark the end of September of 2017. So this year we have the remainder of last year and this year to make up. So we have that many that we can do in 3 years, 35 for each year.
So has there, based on perhaps the data that you received, as well as maybe the parameters of your grant, is there an actual capacity or total number of active families or parents that can be in your program at any one time?
Well, that number can fluctuate, but again, like Gina indicated, 35 is our number per year. So, we're obviously going to at times be over 35 because we're having some come in that, as they graduate, others are going to come in. So it's a fluid number.
So it sounds like you don't necessarily have a capacity. It's just based on new enrollment every year.
Yeah, I guess that would be accurate.
Right. We have the money to treat 35 each year, so as long as we don't go above that, but we definitely will have more than 35 this year. And with our judge, she believes in anyone who needs the program to come in as long as we have those treatment dollars.
And a question from an attendee: how often does the judge meet with the team in staffing and then with the parents?
We meet with our parents. We try to do twice a month. There's some months that the way the calendar falls, there might be 1 or there might be 3, but typically twice a month is our calendar. And depending on how the parent is doing, they could come once each time, so twice a month, or they could, if they're doing really well towards the end of the program, they could be every other month.
And just to clarify, you've been using the term or the number of 35, and I'm assuming that that's 35 parents. But can you just confirm
35?
That?
Yeah, that's 35 parents, participants.
Great. Thank you. So let's go ahead and move on to our next question, and then after the question we will open it up to broadly. I know we're getting other questions in, and we'll circle back and get to those as well. The second question we have specifically is about what kind of family drug court model did you implement, and what was the rationale behind that decision? And what we mean here is there are two, depending on how you define it, but there are two main models, family drug court models. One is integrated and one is parallel. And integrated means, very simply, integrated means that the same judge is hearing both the dependency matter and hearing the family drug court progress hearings. In a parallel court model, the family drug court judge is a different judge than the judge that hears the dependency matters. So they're held separately and by different judges. There are some programs that would describe themselves as hybrids, and that's why I said that there's two officially, and then there's a sort of a third. And the hybrid model really is where typically the family drug court judge who's hearing the progress hearings for all family drug court participants may also be hearing some but not all of the dependency matters. So let's start with Grant County. Can you talk to us about which model you're using and how that decision was made?
Sure. So we are a hybrid model. The same judge hears both the dependency cases and our family recovery court hearings, but we hold those separately. I think a big factor that came into play with that is availability of judges. We have one judge that handles all the dependency cases within the county. She does delegate some of like initial hearings and things like that to the juvenile magistrate, but overall she hears all the dependency cases, so we just have the one judge. The other factor we considered is just child confidentiality. We wanted to make sure that we were protecting the children no matter what, and so we just didn't feel like addressing some of those issues through our family recovery court was appropriate. And then time was also the other factor. Is our court hearings are held from initially it was 1 to 1:30, now it's 1 to 1:45, sometimes 2. So we try to schedule our review hearings for our participants right after family recovery court, so that we're making the most out of their time also, but also protecting child confidentiality through that too.
Wonderful. So I'm going to ask this question now, so Grant County can respond to it, and then I'd like the other panelists to talk about it too, if it relates certainly to your answer. But with a hybrid model, the question from the attendee is, how do you manage issues of ex parte communication? So
sure.
if you're, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have our frontline team, which consists of the Department of Child Services, treatment, CASA, and then myself as the coordinator. And then at a certain point in staffing, judges present to review progress throughout the week. And then when it comes to incentives and sanctions, our attorneys are present for that also. So any type of communication, our team's really cohesive in that manner. As far as ex parte, we're not really coming up against that because that's what's included. Our attorneys are included in that discussion, whether that's via email or in our staff meetings. They're present then for the last 15 minutes to discuss any issues or any concerns, specifically sanctions if parents are addressing any non-compliant behavior for the week.
And going back to your original question about how often Grant County meets with our judge and the families, it is weekly. It's a phased program, but initially it's weekly.
Great. Thanks so much. And let me just clarify something that someone raised in the chat box. I've been using the term dependency, and there was a question to kind of clarify that term. When I'm talking about the dependency matter, I'm talking about the child welfare case. So we often talk about family or juvenile court as dependency court. So I'm using dependency to describe the matter that's before the juvenile or family court related to the child welfare case. And as opposed to, we often use the term dependency when we think about substance use disorders. And we, prior to the most recent Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, we would refer to chemical dependency. And that language, of course, has changed to substance use disorders, but just so that we're clear and that we'll do our best not to confuse issues. But right, so when I'm saying dependency matter, dependency court, I am talking about the abuse and neglect case that's before the juvenile or family court. So let's go ahead and move on to Montgomery County, Ohio. Tell us about your model and the reason behind choosing it.
Right, so at Montgomery County, we are a definite hybrid model. Throughout the planning stages, we had really been dedicated to doing an integrated model. because our team of experts who had started other specialized dockets came from the delinquency side, and that's how they were formulated, was after the integrated model. However, once we started up, we realized how different that was going to look and actually how different that it is. And our magistrate had voiced lots of concerns about, whether or not we were going to be biased or impartial in some of these expected situations, just like you spoke about a minute ago, for confidentiality purposes. And then at the same time, we had our child welfare agency were doing filings that were not communicated to the family treatment court. And as a result of that, our team wasn't able to have any input or to give updates in regards to how that case was proceeding. And that was kind of where we built a hybrid. So the cases that directly relate to, expedited reunification or visitation or anything such as that, we move over into the family treatment court and hear those cases there. Any new filings or discussions of permanency where there may be confidentiality issues, we keep those, we direct those back to the original assigned magistrate. It's been difficult. I think it's a work in progress. I think that we're constantly reevaluating how we should operate. But so far, this has been a really good fit for us. We feel like this is a really good for our communication. I think one way that we were able to succeed in this fashion was we started a designated children's services unit. So we have 4 caseworkers through our child welfare agencies that are designated only to us. So during that referral process, referrals still go our traditional route through them, but once they're accepted into us, they're assigned to this to our designated unit. So that helps with that communication to make sure that we are aware of all those filings and that we can team negotiate or team discuss all the issues that are pending in front of the court and make decisions based that way. That's where we were definitely having a challenge before.
Great, wonderful. Thanks so much. So now let's go ahead and hear from our Pinellas County, Florida panelists. Talk to us about your model and how you chose the model.
Well, this was an easy decision for us because in the Sixth Circuit we have a unified family court, which the concept is one judge, one family. Therefore, we went with the integrated approach. We have one judge that hears everything. We also have designated case managers, designated attorneys, designated guardian ad litem. So we do have a team of people. We do know each other very well. We talk very often. So we're able to communicate those matters quite quickly and efficiently. So what we learned back in our 2006 launch, which was also integrated, was we need to do something a little bit different, reference the identification of cases. Originally, we put that role on our child protective investigators. We learned early on that wasn't going to work and that wasn't giving us the numbers that we needed. That's where we kind of came up with the coordinator position that Doug does, and that's where we took the approach. So our court staff actually identifies the cases and does everything to get them started in that program. Doug, do you want to talk about what you do?
Yes. As far as identifying the cases, I get in the morning and review all of our shelter petitions and identify potential participants for substance abuse issues. Once I've identified those in the morning, before court starts, I try to, if the attorneys have some time, I try to talk to them about identifying their client that they are a possible candidate for the dependency drug court program, and then if they are accessible to that idea, what I do is then talk to the parent after court, try to initiate them, get them involved, and try to get them signed up immediately to go over to West Care, which is our treatment provider, and have an intake appointment to get the ball rolling. Kind of, Gina likes to call it strike while the iron is hot, so to speak. And then if we can't get them right away, I try to follow them up at subsequent hearings just to try to stay in touch with them or, stay after them, so to speak, to see if we can get them into our program.
And we've learned having a dedicated person has been essential to get our program. Again, getting our numbers up at the beginning took a little bit of time. Since we have a dedicated person who now has built such a rapport with all of our stakeholders and our staff. We have our court attorneys. We're a little skeptical at first. We had some problems there, but Doug has won them over. They now go to him. They contact him. They've got questions. So he is our point person. He is the person when he's walking through the courtroom, people know who he is. They can come up to him, ask him about him, and they can feel more comfortable about that program. You will have much higher buy-in if you have those attorneys supporting you. So that was really important to us to get that support and that rapport going early on.
And going along with that, it was like the first about 8 months or so, they had about 11 cases, and in the last 6 months, we doubled that number up to 22, so we are at 33, participants today.
So can I get you to just provide a little bit of clarification? Again, terminology is different from one state to another, and so can you define shelter care hearing? And you mentioned that that's part of your kind of revised process, that's how you identify cases early. And can you just define that for us so that everyone understands what that means in their own jurisdiction?
Sure. Shelter hearing is the first hearing that we have within 24 hours of a child being removed. The Child Protective Investigator writes what we call a shelter petition. That is the reason for removal. That information is what the judge reviews to determine whether or not they have probable cause to have that child removed. So that's what Doug is reviewing. He's looking in here to see, are there allegations of drug use? He's doing research to see whether or not there's any pending criminal cases. If we have an adult drug court in our circuit as well. So if they are already in adult drug court, they cannot be in our court as well. We can't duplicate those services. So he's researching there, looking to see if there's been a prior removals. Is this a case that is the first time, or if they had their children removed several times before, is this person appropriate for services? So he does that all before he even walks into court at our 8:30 calendar.
Great. Thanks so much. So now we're going to move into our more open-ended questions. We have quite a few. we have quite a few questions, so I'd like to start by asking questions about partnerships. So and we're going to start with Grant County, and what we'd like to do is hear from you about. When we think of family drug courts, family treatment courts, we are often talking about sort of the core three partners, that is the court and their justice partners, so the judge and attorneys, and sometimes court administration, and then the second partner typically is child welfare, and then third is substance use disorder treatment providers. So if we think of those as the three core partners, I'd like each of you to talk about what other partners do you have at the table? Because we know, and someone brought it up in the chat box, that sometimes we have a partnership with schools. We've also, at CFF, we've worked with a number of family treatment courts that have an active partnership and have a public health nurse attending, staffing, and court. We have services for children, service providers that are actually providing services to children, those providers being part of the partnership. So what we want to do is just hear from you about what other partners do you have at the table, either whether or not they attend staffing and court, but who else do you include besides those core three? Let's start with Grant County.
Well, obviously, CASA is at the table in Grant County. We do have 2 dedicated staff members that are not volunteers that attend pre-staffing and staffing in court weekly. We present the evidence to the team on what's happening with the children. So we don't specifically have partners that are sitting at the table for the children as services, but we do present the children's needs to the entire team on a weekly basis or biweekly basis, depending on what's happening with them. That's proven to be sometimes some difficult discussions because the CASA perspective is the only reason that these families are involved with this court is because of their children. Otherwise, they would be in adult drug court. So we feel often that the needs of the children are vital to the success of the program and the families that we're serving. So we've had to work through several things with keeping that line of communication open, but I think when we go to state level things and even national level things, CASA is not always part of this team. So we're very fortunate that Judge asked us to be there from the inception of the program, and we've worked through most of the issues.
Definitely. And I can tell you how vital it is to be able to discuss some of the things that are, so I talked earlier about how we went to like this hybrid model because of child confidentiality, but a lot of what CASA brings to the table is what new thing that the child is doing this week, whether that's joining a baseball team or he got his first A, or, you know, those things that somewhat get overlooked because we're focusing on parent no called, no showed for treatment or whatever that looks like. So the CASA piece is just super essential, and that's how I know there's some questions about parent engagement. We get a lot of buy-in from our parents when we can shift the focus back to their kids. This is why we're here. You have a substance use disorder. We need to get you treatment for that, and the reason we're doing that is so that your children and your family can remain whole. So as far as other team members that we work with, we have a partnership with the Marion Housing Authority. They've prioritized our program to receive housing vouchers as we face housing is a huge barrier for our families. So they attend kind of our steering committees, like a monthly meeting that we usually have. We also have, I'm trying to think, Pregnancy Help Center is a local agency. So they do parent education. They have kind of an earn while you learn program. So you do an hour of their parenting program and then you get a pack of diapers or things like that. So young moms or new babies, moms who are pregnant in the program, we refer to them very often. There's also a program called Circles of Grant County, and their focus is getting parents connected to positive community support. So kind of removing the negative of the active addiction and replacing that with something positive. You often hear the opposite of addiction is connection. So we can find a huge level of buy-in with that also, and we have a lot of success with our parents who participate in that. So that's kind of, and we also have Premier Care. They are our MAT provider. We have two substance abuse treatment providers, and then we have an MAT, so medically assisted treatment. So we have it's methadone maintenance treatment. They sit at the table with us, and then Grant Blackford Mental Health, they use Vivitrol and naltrexone. We do not have a partner with Suboxone, but obviously we accept people who are on Suboxone, and then we have a way to work around that too. So that's kind of what our team is made up of, and then that's who else we bring to the table as needed for our parents. Thank you.
You anticipated my question about MAT providers, so yes. Thanks very much. Let's go ahead and hear from Montgomery County, Ohio. Can you tell us about your other partners?
Hear us? Yes.
Yes.
Hello? Okay. So other than all the ones that they already mentioned, the treatment providers, housing authorities, we also have a huge component for ours is child support. So in our county, we have a designated, a specialized caseload in child support that if someone's in treatment or in a specialty docket like this, they are given extra time to be able to pay back the child support, and also linked with services on be able to help them get jobs and help with job skills training, which is huge. We also have another huge collaboration is with our Children Matter component, and that's through Adamus, and that is who provides the treatment for the children, because in addition to making sure all of the parents get assessments, we also make sure that the kids get assessments to address any trauma that they have in the household. We have our peer support that comes. We have the Dayton Police Department loaned us a peer supporter, a certified peer supporter that comes to treatment team and comes to docket each week to connect with clients. And then we have our, obviously our specialized unit in children's services. Those caseworkers come, all of the treatment providers. But I think what's also huge is that anytime any of our clients are involved in any services, we make it a point to reach out to that provider and always invite them to treatment team to make sure that we are all on the same page and that we can streamline services so that we can provide the best possible care to all the clients.
Yeah, thank you so much. You anticipated my follow-up question too, which was going to be about peer support. So great, that's great to hear. And those, again, you can't have everybody around the staffing table, but all of these kinds of partnerships are critical to the work that's being done. There are lots of other questions we're getting about partnerships, and we're going to get to a few more questions in just a moment. Before we do, I want to hear about Pinellas County, Florida, and the partners that you have that join you.
We don't really have any other partners that join us, but as, for example, we don't have with our treatment provider, we don't have a recovery coach. So what we do is we try to survey our participants and ask them what they would like to learn about or hear about. We have an upcoming thing here in a few weeks where there's something here in the greater St. Pete area called 211, and it's a thing that can provide them with all sorts of different resources. So they're going to come talk to our participants about what they have to offer. You know, you can reach us by phone, text, email. You can get on an app and learn about resources. We also try to do something with the parents called an icebreaker, so we can meet with the parents and with either the foster parent or the relative caregiver and try to coordinate with everybody to make sure the child's needs and wants and all those things are being met. And
there's lots more information about that icebreaker process in Pinellas County. I've heard more about it when I was there, and it sounds, when it goes well, it sounds like it's really just such an added important piece to the work that's being done with and by families in your community. So thanks for sharing that. So related to the question about partnerships, there's a question that's come up from one of the attendees about any challenges engaging child welfare, either at the beginning, during the early planning, or during implementation. Can you, if you've had any challenges with engaging child welfare, we want to hear about that. If you've overcome some of those challenges, or if you didn't have challenges and you think it's because of some strategy that you put into place, can you address that? And I'm going to start with Grant County, and if there are no challenges and nothing to add, that's fine. You can just let us know. I think you're on mute. We can't hear you, Ariel.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yeah.
So we do have a designated, within child welfare, there's a designated unit for the Family Recovery Court program. So outside of that unit, we do face some resistance for the program, whether that's just notifications of hearings or just kind of that initial access to the program for initial assessment, things like that. We've since implemented an executive committee. So we've been working on our governance structure a lot. That's been the topic of 2017 and continuing 2018 for us. And so that's kind of been our guiding strategy, and to address that is they're our referral source. That's where we get the cases from, and so we need to make sure that we're getting access to those cases and that we're getting these parents proper treatment. But once they're assessed and in the program, we have a very dedicated team from child welfare that represent for our program.
Great, thanks. How about Montgomery County? Any challenges engaging child welfare?
I think a huge benefit to us in the beginning was collaborating with Children's Services from the beginning, and so they were always in the implementation process, because obviously we're coming from two different cultures and we're trying to get on the same page, and everybody's norms and standards are different, so it was important to have them in on the implementation process. But we did have some resistance from Children's Services line staff in the beginning, just because they were unfamiliar with the process and the way that we wanted to do things. So I think what was huge for us was being consistent. We always went to different union meetings or district meetings to give information about the program and what we were doing. We were always willing to take suggestions and feedback, and then we would go back to the drawing board and come back again. Also, we had designated people in Children's Services that were really committed to the program, who really pushed a lot of the things through that maybe where we couldn't get access to. So it was really helpful one, having them in an implementation process, but then again, just being consistent in the information that we were given, and then making sure that we always, again, invite them to the table. We can always tell people how great the program is or what great things we're doing, but until you actually see it, it's a lot harder to grasp the concept. So all those things were important.
I think the biggest thing was quickly identifying allies, though, and then using them as resources to bring us together. So there was, there was them and us. So we hear that a lot, them and us. And then we had a team in the middle that kind of brought us together, and that was key.
Wonderful, thank you. We're about out of time. Pinellas County, is there any quick item that you wanted to add that you haven't heard from the other panelists before we move to the last polling question?
No, I don't believe so. We don't have those problems because we take on the key role of identifying cases and coordinating everything, so it's not as much work for them. We do hear sometimes from new case managers who aren't aware of our program that, well, they're going to have to learn more about drug court before they recommend to the parents whether or not they should come in. And that's just where we go back to the supervisors then, or even the program directors of that agency, and kind of come in and offer to do more training with them, sending them our brochures, asking questions, whatever it is, just so they're educated. We want to make sure the new case managers are educated about our program and aren't afraid of it and don't give out any incorrect information.
Perfect, and that was a great example. Thank you so much. So now we have a quick polling question. This question is about the 5 decision points that you would like more information about. There are, the 5 are there: collecting data to establish need, building cross-system and multi-level governance structure, selection of a model, integrated or parallel, developing process for early and timely screening, assessments, treatment and recovery support, and interagency training. I have to say, as you're responding to this poll, you may want information about all of these. We are Children and Family Futures, on behalf of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, has a program, the Family Drug Court Training and Technical Assistance Program, and so you are more than welcome to reach out to us to ask these other questions and for us to get you additional information. So we're going to go ahead and close the poll now, and if you see, you should be able to see the results now. It looks like pretty much 40%. The rest are fairly evenly spaced, but we see a little more than 40% for developing a process for early and timely screening, assessment, treatment, and recovery support. I know that a lot of the questions that really haven't been answered were around some of those issues as well. There were some questions around sustainability. And we definitely, we recognize the importance of this sustainability, the importance of grants, but that programs really can't be sustained long-term with grants. How do we manage that? We have resources, we have technical assistance and training resources on all of these topics. So what we would like to do is certainly invite you all to contact us for additional technical assistance and for some of these additional information. We also want to let you know that the questions that were asked but we didn't have time to answer and you didn't have time to hear from the panelists, we will address those questions and make the answers available to you. We want to encourage you to download the action guide, and with that, we are about out of time, and I'd like to turn it over to William Moore, who is our host at NTTAC. And thank you all for your participation in this webinar.
Yes, thank you very much, Jane, and thank you to all of our presenters as well for the lively discussion. Thank you, participants, for the questions that you've posed for us. Really quickly, before we end today's presentation, I just have a few last-minute things that I wanted to discuss with you all. For more information about today's presentation, please be sure to contact National Family Drug Court and Technical Assistance Program at the information that is presented on the slide here. And as a reminder, the webinar recording will be archived in approximately 3 weeks on OJJDP's YouTube channel, where you can also view past webinars if you like and receive supporting documents like PowerPoint slides, presenter bios, transcripts, etc. You can get all of that from OJJDP's TTA Help Desk. You can email us at ojjdptta@usdoj.gov. And you can also contact us for this information. If you, for those of you who are remaining, again, the handout pod is located at the bottom right-hand corner where you can download all of the associated documents there as well. And you may also contact OJJDP NTTAC's Help Desk via the following contact information on this slide displayed here. Please take a few seconds to review the disclaimer information that's on this slide. And lastly, we would appreciate if you could please take 5 minutes to complete the feedback survey that we will that is located on this slide here, and is also in the PowerPoint presentation, and will be sent to you as well once we end the presentation. And again, thank you all again for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us today on this Thursday. You all have a great day and take care. Goodbye.